In the next section, we're really going to talk about converting some existing content and taking some of the content that you may have inside of PowerPoint or doing some screen recordings and other things like that. After that, we're really going to dive into building our own content right inside of Storyline and not just converting it over. In this section, we're still kind of exploring the basics and how to navigate. And one thing that I wanted to talk about was actually resizing your Storyline canvas. So this canvas area essentially is not that large. And this is the very first thing that I do when I come into Storyline is I go in and I resize the canvas. Now, if you think about it, inside of a tablet, if I preview this inside of an iPad, for example, the content is pretty small here. In fact, when the menu is expanded, it's even smaller. But if I close the menu, you can see that it's really not proportional here. And if it's really small, it kind of stretches it out as well. So again, the first thing I do is I come into the design and then I click on story size. Now, the size that I found in most cases that works, it will resize automatically for me. But if I come into the 16:9, that kind of gives me a wider ratio. However, 720x405 is pretty small, and Storyline content will stretch out. So if it's really small to begin with, and then you go onto a large device with a really high density pixel ratio, it's going to look really pixelated. So I definitely want to make it a lot larger than this. And I usually range between 1200 to about 1000. If I come in and I make sure this lock aspect ratio is enabled, when I tab over, you'll see that the height will automatically resize as well. And that will just give me a lot more room to work with. If you're unsure about the 1200, you can go into 1000. That's probably a good range as well. And then click OK. Now, I always do this before I start inserting some content, because what happens is when you resize the content later, if you have these options, it can scale to fit, but it starts to, make the images skiwampus. That's a technical term, or, like resize or squished or things like that. It doesn't always do a good job at that. So I like to do this before I have any type of content on the stage there and then click OK. Now, if I come back in and I preview this again, let's do it in landscape here. It still may be small. In fact, we may get larger bars on the top and the bottom, but I adjust the settings to have the menu hidden by default. I can come in here, and this is not exactly the iPad size, so keep that in mind. You could adjust this a little bit more, but this looks a little bit better, and so we'll talk about how to adjust the player even further as we go down here. But that's at least the size that I've been the most comfortable with in order to get a good design here and have it at that 16:9 ratio. So go ahead and do that to begin with. You can choose the size that you feel is best for you if you wanted to find a custom size. Don't try to find one that fits for everything, because you're pretty much on the different devices, it's going to look different. And so again, keep in mind that it's just going to resize and you may have to just adjust that anyways. But we'll talk about some more of that as we go on here, but make sure that you at least adjust it for now. And then we'll move on to adjusting the docks and how we can use the panels to adjust those in the next video. But we'll talk about how to actually adjust some of the layout here to maximize the space that we have to work with here.